Hello, hello, sisters unbothered. Welcome back. This is phase one, week 4, and we are talking about unmasking the myth of martyrdom when putting yourself first feels wrong, but it isn't. That's our topic for this week, and this is your training video. What I want to talk about specifically is based off of something that I just experienced or had a realization about very recently. I was Grams with my grandson last week, and as much as I loved having him here, I have to tell y'all I was ready for him to go. And originally, when I found out that my oldest daughter was pregnant, I had some reservations about what type of grandparent I would be because I understood that my patience for children was very slim. That is not my calling, y'all. Not to mention, I had 4 girls, and all of us have seemingly introverted traits, some more than others, like myself. But the house was fairly peaceful, minus their bickering, which I learned to tune out, but they weren't very energetic most of the time. My grandson is a ball of energy, y'all. He was all over the place, doing all the things, flipping all over me, not wanting to go to sleep, not wanting to take a nap, whining about everything. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine doing this full time in my mid 40s. So shout out to my sisters that are out there raising little ones or helping to raise little ones in your 40s and 50s and 60s, y'all, because I just can't even imagine what that is like. Anyway, that was where we got this topic. This was not supposed to be the original topic. So if you're following from the playbook, it can relate, but it's not necessarily what we talked about in the playbook. Okay. All right. So what I want us to think about is where we've been taught by culture, by church, and even by our families and ancestry that being good means being ultimately exhausted. Does holiness look like burnout? That love equals constant sacrifice. Does loving someone mean you have to constantly and consistently sacrifice what matters to you the most? Because a lot of us will feel guilty and say, okay, if they matter that much to me, then I'd be willing to sacrifice. And that is the case to an extent. We do not have to continue to put ourselves, our dreams, our desires, our calling on the altar for the whims of others. This is the truth, my sister. Rest is righteous. Boundaries are, in fact, biblical. And you can love people deeply and still say no with no explanation, point blank, period. So I want us to unmask that lie right here, right now, today. Let's get started. Let's talk about the lie versus the truth here. The lie. You have to sacrifice yourself to be seen as loving, holy, or good. What does that look like in practical everyday life? That looks like running yourself ragged for the desires and the wants of others. It looks like casting aside what truly matters to you, your character, your dreams, your beliefs, your desires, what feels comfortable and right to you as opposed to someone else. All of those things that we tend to find ourselves ignoring in order to make others feel more comfortable, dimming our lights so that others can shine brighter than us, minimizing our amazingness so that others don't feel intimidated, hiding ourselves and trying to blend in so that we are not seen as too much. That is because we are believing the lie that we have to sacrifice ourselves in order to truly love, be godlike, and be good people to others in this world. And can I tell you, I'm here to remind you that all of us are believing some type of lie. However, should we be confronted with the truth shall set us free. Yes, I know that is a cliche, but it's very, very true. When you begin to embrace the truth as your mindset and your perspective, you will show up differently, which will call everyone around you and everything to show up differently as well. And when you can't control it, you can at least show up in a way that will allow you to accept that you can't control it and do what you can do in the moment, the best that you can do. No shame, no guilt. Okay? And what does the truth look like pertaining to this topic of martyring yourself, your dreams, your desires, dimming your light, hiding yourself, blending in the background? This looks like something that causes us to show up fully, y'all. The truth is that our rest is righteous. Okay? You don't have to run yourself ragged to prove how much you love the Lord or that you are connected to your church family. Do not have to run yourself ragged for that. You do not have to run yourself ragged and deplete your cup fully for those that you love. That is not God's desire for you, and it shouldn't be their desire either. And if it is their desire, you should not be entertaining that at all. There needs to be a boundary that needs to be set for your protection. Okay? Because remember, boundaries are for you, not to manipulate others. And boundaries are biblical. We are going to see in the next slide that Jesus had to use boundaries. He taught us how to use boundaries to ensure that we love God with all of us and love others as well as ourselves. He was our first and final example of what that really should look like from a divine and a human perspective. So then I ask you, are you overgiving out of love or fear? That is powerful, because in the past, when I think back, fearing rejection, fearing failure, fearing aloneness, fearing judgment, I did a whole lot to deplete myself, energy, time, money, not because I was genuinely loving the person or loving the people in the situation I was in. It more so was being fed by my fears of being rejected, my fears of failing or being looked at as a failure, my fears of not being good enough and inadequate, seen as inadequate, my fears of being judged by others, not being good enough, kind enough, Christian enough, holy enough, righteous enough. What is your driving factor? Are you being driven by the lie or are you being driven by the truth? And this is a good one. Are you confusing martyrdom with maturity? I wanted to pause for effect on that one. And I want to remind you that age has absolutely nothing to do with maturity, y'all. Yes, you can have more experiences, but maturity begins from within. It is not determined by what's going on the outside. Maturity is determined by the growth and healing that takes place within. And when you operate from a space of maturity, you will begin to understand that life will keep moving without you. That you can put down that savior complex and you can just be who God called you to be. Just show up, y'all. We talked about this. If you simply show up, he can use you in the way that he intended without you having to do all of the heavy lifting. Jesus said that his burden is light and his yoke is easy if we will give him ours and take his. Ours is full of fear and anxiety and inadequacy and just mess. Okay. So getting a better understanding of how mature you are, which comes from what? That liberation that you're seeking, changing your mindset, being renewed by the spirit of your mind, being liberated from the lies that you have been told and taught and seen and experienced, and begin to allow the truth from a divine perspective and from the perspective of understanding and knowing yourself will allow you to begin to mature and no longer sacrifice yourself on the altar of others. And I want to ask this again. We've asked this question before. Who actually benefits when you burn out? Who actually benefits when you burn out? Is it you? Absolutely not. Let's move on to the next one. I think this is the perfect time to talk about one of my most favorite series, The Chosen, on Amazon Prime. When I tell you, if you've ever felt weary about watching biblical interpretations, this one is definitely worth your time if you have not. Season 5 is out. I personally have not watched it yet, so please, no spoilers. But I think because I know that it's going to be sad, that I am waiting till I am ready to handle that, the bandwidth of it, energy and emotional wise. Because season 5, it seems like this is where we're working our way either to the crucifixion or it will actually happen by the end of the season. So I'm trying to prepare for that. This is not like Passion of the Christ, because you actually have had the time to get to know them as human beings. Where have you ever seen Jesus jumping around in the sea, playing with his disciples? Like, it's beautiful the way they've adapted his life into this series, and the apostles as well. Peter is definitely still my favorite. So if you watch The Chosen, if you haven't, or if you have, I want you to go back and watch it. I want you to pay attention to how he lives. He definitely sets boundaries. He knew when to say no. He knew when to withdraw himself. And he knew when he needed to protect his peace as well as the peace of others. And as you can see here, we have some scriptures from Luke 5:16, Romans 12:1, and Galatians 5:1 that reminds us that he was the sole example, that even as the divine man, that it is okay to preserve your relationship with God, our Father, and with yourself. And that you were meant to live free, to live out the purposes that God intended for you, not to be depleted and drained and unable to do so because of the whims of others. Jesus was okay with saying not now or give me a moment, and you have to be okay to do the same. So I want you to write this down in your journal. You can honor people without abandoning yourself. You can honor people without abandoning yourself. One more time. I can honor people, serve and love them without abandoning myself. All right, there's this term that we like to use in the coaching industry, and it's called reframing. What does reframing mean? Ultimately, it really just means changing the way you think and look at something. So like we were already talking about, renewing our minds, changing our minds, shifting our mindsets, and changing the way that we perceive ourselves, our Lord, and the world around us. When we reframe, we are able to move away from the lies and move closer or into the truths. The truths that are going to lead us into the lives that truly feel fulfilling and bring forth the transformation that we seek, right? My book, Reciprocity Eludes Me, was really me desiring to see those transformations come to fruition and to have that fruit. But I was reciprocating out into the world and into my relationships the opposite of what I wanted to come back. That is ultimately what that book is about. And all of us do that in some way. It requires reframing or changing the way we think, or as the Bible says, renewing our minds. And this, again, for any true transformation, has to be done from a spiritual and a practical or natural perspective. Okay? So let's talk about reframing selfishness. We want to reframe it into self stewardship. Okay? Because this is the key. If you are following the greatest commandment that Jesus gave us all in Matthew, and we're saying that we are loving God with all of our heart, body, and soul, with our lives, and we are loving others as we love ourselves. That means that we are taking on the responsibility of our stewarding our relationship with the Lord, stewarding our relationship with ourselves, and stewarding our relationship with others. Steward, what does that mean? Steward means how you manage, how you operate, the logistics of that thing. What are you doing? What are you doing to manage, to organize, to orchestrate your relationship with the Lord? What are you doing to get to know yourself, self-discovery, self-care, self-encouragement, self-empowerment? What are you doing in the lives of others? Are you being a good example? Are you utilizing your influence and your impact in a righteous way? We're not just talking about thumping people upside the head with our beliefs or trying to make people accept that we are right about everything. Okay? This is about understanding that we all individually hold a level of responsibility to steward our relationship with our Lord, ourselves, and the others around us, as well as our environment, our finances or resources that we are blessed with, right? Any influence that we have been allowed to have in this world or those around us, any impact that we are able to make, all of this needs to be managed and stewarded by us. But the problem with that is a lot of times we work diligently to show up successfully and responsibly and respectably in our stewardship of others. We feel rewarded because we manage our households well. We administrate our finances or our credit score or our marriages, our men, our partners. We manage at work. We are like boss bees, okay? We know how to manage the heck and administrate the heck out of something. That's why when I was going through my project management training in order to become certified, I realized that most women already have so much background and experience at management, project management at that, the management of people and resources and strategies, right? Timelines and deadlines, and being able to see what's working so you can go back to the beginning and restart and revamp and make changes. Y'all, we already have this in us. But the issue is that we've been conditioned to apply this to our external world more than we apply it to our spiritual, mental, and emotional health, healing, and development. And when we grow from the inside out, that's when a full reframe happens and we are able to truly be who we need to be in this world. Okay? So reframing ourselves from selfishness to self-stewardship. Okay? It is not selfish to focus on yourself. It is not selfish to focus or neglect, no longer neglect yourself. It's about alignment. It's about discernment, and it's about letting your yes be yes and your no be no, period. So when you decide to give yourself more love and attention and care and compassion and understanding. You are saying no to neglect any longer, isolating any longer, or avoiding any longer. Avoiding making the changes, avoiding coming to terms with what your truth is in that moment. No more avoiding it. I could no longer avoid the fact that I am miserable and not having the freedom to wear what I want to wear. Not because I want to be out here looking like a 46-year-old hoochie mama, but because I want to. There's a woman inside of me that has always wanted to have a certain style, class, and aesthetic. And that aesthetic was overtaken by my desperate attempts over the years in various ways to hide myself from the world because I was not fully comfortable physically with who she is. But avoiding is going to always cast a shadow. Okay? So we want this to be about discernment, asking the Lord what works for you and what does not. So you're not spinning your wheels going in circles. That you will actually be gaining ground and moving forward one foot in front of the other, even if they're baby steps. It's about, again, stewardship, management, organization, okay? Administrating. It's about alignment. Alignment, what does that mean? That means you are in alignment with God's purposes for you, His will for you. You are in alignment with your core values and what truly matters to you and your belief systems. And then everything else is built upon that. Okay? So I want you to remember from this slide, let your yes be yes and your no be no. What are you doing to go from guilt to grace? I know from the dieting perspective, it's very easy, or the weight loss perspective. It is super easy to get lost in the sauce when it comes to guilt and shame, instead of giving yourself grace, consistency, and patience, which is where I'm at. Let's move on to the next one. All right, this is getting to be a little bit longer than I expected, but I think it's very, very much needed, not just for me, but also for all of you. I think all of us can relate to this in some way, whether it's at home, at church, in our businesses, in our workplaces, even in our friend circles. We might be the one that everyone tends to expect to be compliant in every single way possible, except for with themselves. So I want you to speak this over yourself. If you have read this week's blog post that posted on Monday, in that blog post at the end, there is a worksheet for you all to download that corresponds with this week's topic. And that will have a mirror prayer in there, the full prayer. But right now, for time's sake, say this with me. We're only going to do a few parts of this. And I want you to say this to yourself. Use that paper, that worksheet, and say this prayer to yourself until you believe it. And then say it again. I don't owe anyone my exhaustion. My no is holy and warranted. I choose me. I choose peace because I first choose God. Okay? Let me know if you have any problems with getting the worksheet. And let's move on. All right, we are close to the end here. For this week's journal prompt, this is also going to be broken down on your worksheet. I want you to ask yourself and write about, what mask have you been wearing in the name of selflessness? We believe that as good people, good Christian people, that we are to be selfless. But what does that look like in your life? Does that look like selflessness with the neglect of self as the side order? Or are you stewarding yourself so that you're not pouring from an empty cup, making that the main entree? Write about it. What do I need permission to release? First of all, we need to talk to the Lord about this. You don't need my permission. You don't need your spouse's permission. You don't need your children's permission. You don't need your boss's permission. You don't need your pastor's permission to release the lies that hold you bondage into a space of exhaustion, low self-esteem, low self-worth, neglect, all of the things that we do when we mask ourselves from what truly matters to us and what we truly need and who God says that we are, regardless of what anyone else says. Okay? You can love them and still say no. You can love yourself and still say no. But it's all about stewardship, y'all. All of it. So I want you to consider truly using these journal prompts to really allow yourself to really think this through. Your action steps for this week, I would like for you to focus on each of these steps and then join me on Saturday on the coaching session, Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will make sure to put the link in the Sisters Unbothered Substack so that you can attend. It will be on Google Meet, okay? But before we get to Saturday, I would like for you to complete your worksheet. Take time to thoughtfully fill it out. Do some of the journaling prompts, if not all of them. Make sure you're using the mirror prayer and the affirmations, and even check out the scriptures, okay? Because if you're going to truly see transformation, remember, you have to apply the spiritual and the natural work in order to see that happen. Make sure you're speaking the mirror prayer before you go to bed. And share your guiltless no. I want you to journal about it, share it with a trusted friend about a boundary that you established in order to help yourself, to hold yourself accountable as well as others. I want you to choose one moment this week. I challenge you to protect your peace without apology. And then tell us about it in the coaching session this Saturday. All right. You have made it through another week's training. I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. This is not something that is super fun. It's not catching up on the Diddy trial or the latest gossip. This is you actually taking some time for yourself so that you can start showing up in this world authentically, confidently, and anointed for God's purposes and for what truly matters to you. Okay? Not what matters to somebody else, but you. So I want you to say the final affirmation with me. I want you to own it. I want you to stand 10 toes down for it. And I want you to believe it. You ready? I am not selfish. I am divine. My rest is part of my holy worship. My boundaries are holy. Why do we say that, y'all? We say that because we're not trying to work ourselves to the bone to prove our holiness. We are not trying to earn God's grace and love and mercy and resources, protection and provision, because we can't. And if that is our most important relationship in our lives, that is the catalyst for every other relationship that we have. And if all we have to simply do is to love and be loved, we should be able to do that across the board, not just with the creator of all things. Okay? And we use boundaries as a way to do that. You are not choosing against others. You're choosing with God and with you. Okay? That doesn't mean you turn and snub other people to focus only on God and only on you. It is finding a way to practice moderation Understanding your priorities. Who needs to go first right now? Okay? Most times, all times, your relationship with God should always go first. But sometimes you'll have to know how to bob and weave between prioritizing your own relationship with yourself and your relationship with others. And let that be enough. Okay? So remember, setting boundaries isn't just good for you, it allows others to experience the healthy, healed, energetic, authentic you that God created you to be. I'll see you next week.